There are moments in the journey of faith when progress and opposition arrive at the same time, when doors open and resistance rises in the same place, when belief begins to grow and conflict begins to form, when truth is welcomed by some and rejected by others in the very same room. Iconium was one of those places. It was not a distant battlefield or a place of obvious hostility at the beginning. It was a city where ordinary life continued, markets, families, trade, and religious gatherings. A place where ideas could be shared, discussed, and debated. And into this environment came Paul and Barnabas. They did not arrive with political power or military protection. They arrived with a message that had already been tested in Cyprus, a message that had already been received by some and rejected by others, a message that did not depend on comfort to survive. And in Iconium, they did what they always did. They went into the synagogue. The pattern continues. Begin where Scripture is known, speak from what is already familiar, and reveal the fulfillment that has come through Jesus. And as they spoke, something significant happened. A great number of Jews and Greeks believed. This is important because the message was not limited to one background or one identity group. It crossed boundaries naturally. It reached people from different cultures, different expectations, and different levels of understanding. The word was not restricted, it was expanding. But as always in the book of Acts, growth and opposition appear together. Because while many believed, there were others who refused to accept the message. Unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the believers. This phrase is strong. Poisoned their minds suggests influence, persuasion, and distortion. It was not simply disagreement. It was active resistance against the spread of belief. And this is where Iconium becomes a turning point, because Paul and Barnabas stayed there for a long time. This is not typical in their journey. In many places they moved quickly due to opposition, but here they remained longer, speaking boldly, relying on the Lord, and witnessing confirmation of the message through signs and wonders. Their presence was not passive, it was active endurance. They did not leave immediately when resistance appeared. They continued until the situation reached a breaking point, and during that time the city became divided. Some supported the Jews, others supported the apostles. Division is one of the clearest indicators in this passage. Not division caused by personal conflict, but division caused by response to truth. Because truth does not always unify opinion, it often separates understanding. As the opposition grew stronger, a plot developed. There was a plan to mistreat them and eventually stone them. At this point, the danger was no longer just verbal resistance, it was physical threat. And Paul and Barnabas became aware of it. This awareness changes the direction of the story, because once their safety was at risk, they had to make a decision. Stay and risk violence, or leave and continue the mission elsewhere. They chose to leave, not because they were defeated, not because the message failed, but because their mission was not tied to one location. They fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding region. And even after leaving Iconium, they continued to preach the gospel. This is one of the most important principles in this passage. Movement does not equal failure when it is guided by purpose. To understand Iconium properly, we need to see the tension that defines it. On one side, belief is growing. On the other side, resistance is increasing. On one side, signs and teaching confirm the message. On the other side, rumors and influence attempt to stop it. And in the middle stand Paul and Barnabas, continuing, speaking, enduring. This pattern repeats throughout Acts, but in Iconium it becomes especially clear. Because they do not leave immediately, they remain long enough for both belief and opposition to fully develop. This reveals something about how truth spreads. Truth does not always remove conflict immediately. Sometimes it reveals conflict that was already present beneath the surface. Before Paul and Barnabas arrived, the city appeared unified. After their message, internal divisions became visible. This is not because the message created division in a destructive sense. It is because it exposed differing responses. Some hearts were open, some hearts were resistant, some were influenced, some were convinced. And all of this happened in the same city, under the same message, at the same time. That is the complexity of spiritual reception. Another important detail is how opposition operates in this passage. It does not begin with direct confrontation. It begins with influence. The minds of people are poisoned through persuasion. This shows that resistance is often intellectual or emotional before it becomes physical. Ideas are shaped before actions are taken, and once perception shifts, behavior follows. This is why Paul and Barnabas do not only speak, they remain long enough for truth to be established despite opposition. But eventually, the situation reaches a tipping point. The threat of stoning is serious. It represents irreversible escalation, and at that moment, they make a strategic decision to leave. This is not retreat in defeat, it is transition in mission, because the mission continues beyond Iconium. They move to Lystra and Derbe, carrying the same message, unchanged by rejection. This is a key theme in their journey. Rejection does not redefine the message, it only redirects its path. Iconium teaches us that not every place will receive the message equally. Some places will respond with belief, others with resistance, others with division, but the message itself remains consistent. Another important reflection from this passage is the role of endurance. Paul and Barnabas do not leave at the first sign of opposition. They stay for a significant time. This suggests that perseverance is part of their mission strategy, because transformation often requires time. Immediate rejection does not always mean permanent rejection. Immediate acceptance does not always mean deep understanding. Time reveals the depth of response, and during their time in Iconium, both belief and opposition mature. The believers grow stronger, the opposition becomes more organized, and eventually, the situation reaches a natural conclusion: departure. But what is left behind is important. A divided city, yes, but also a foundation of belief that will continue beyond their presence. The gospel does not remain dependent on the physical presence of its messengers. It continues through those who believed. This is one of the quiet strengths of early Christian movement. It is not centralized, it is transferable, and Iconium becomes another step in that expansion. The message moves forward not because it is unopposed, but because it is persistent. Even when rejected, it continues. Even when opposed, it spreads. Even when messengers leave, belief remains. As Paul and Barnabas depart, they carry both the results of acceptance and the memory of resistance. But neither defines them. Their identity is not shaped by rejection or acceptance alone. It is shaped by calling, and that calling continues beyond Iconium. The journey ahead will bring new cities, new challenges, new believers, and new opposition. But the pattern remains consistent. Speak, endure, respond, move, and trust that the message is not dependent on one place to succeed. Iconium is not the end of a story. It is one chapter in a larger movement, a movement that continues to expand through obedience even in the presence of opposition. Because truth does not stop when it is resisted. It simply continues through those who carry it. Thank you for watching. If this message encouraged you or helped you understand this passage more deeply, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and follow the Holy Path Insights channel for more biblical reflections that bring Scripture to life in a meaningful and powerful way.